Oh, I think I should charge my laptop actually. Okay, so yeah, we're live on Twitter and we're live on YouTube. Um, to- 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 Yeah, let's
Good do it.
until more people join in. For those that are joining us, if you could post a little comment in the chat letting us know where you're tuning in from. Um, we would love to hear that. Also, if you could like the video so that more people get access to our video through the algorithm. And if you can share it with some friends, that would also be great. Dimitri, where are you uh, joining us from?
I'm joining you from Kalamata. I'm in a park in the center of the town. Um, the reason why I'm out in this park today is because I normally do I can't do live streams from my house, which is an old house up in the mountain because these internet connection is too weak. So I normally do it from an office center in the center of Kalamata, but it's unavailable today because they're having some event there. So unfortunately, I've also interviewed John Helmer from this park today, so we got through that. This should be okay. I see we have comrades coming in. Hello, Bad Wolf. Nadim, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien. Uh, Bad Wolf is from Tampa, Florida. We have Revolution Will 2-3 in Montana. We have Brenda from New York City. You're Duped from Minneapolis. Love that name. And Aniko Moini, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, from Uganda. Welcome. And Rami, why don't you just briefly, before you tell us about your experience in China, I don't know if you had an opportunity, just take a second, explain where you are while we're waiting for other people to join us.
Yes, so I'm currently in Urumqi, the major city and capital of the Xinjiang Autonomous Region, which is part of the People's Republic of China. So I've been here for the last 5 days or so, maybe 6 days, having a great time.
Wonderful. And we're going to invite you to get into that in some more detail in a moment. One of our audience members, Hi Vasiliki from Ohio, Claire from Ireland. Oh God, looks like I'm frozen. No,
You're
not frozen.
frozen,
Sorry,
but
not
we could
frozen.
hear you. Not anymore.
I was looking at the wrong screen. Apologies. So I was saying that Claire from Ireland just notified me that I had no idea that Moody's just downgraded I believe Claire says U.S. economy. I think it probably is. It was the credit rating for the United States. It has lost its perfect credit rating amid rising debt. That is big news. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today is Trump's. Well, our focus of our discussion is going to be Trump's traveling circus show in West Asia. And one of the things he announced was that he's going to be implementing a tax cut. Should come as no surprise to anybody. It'll undoubtedly plug or open up a hole in the already quite challenged United States government budget. And at the same time, he's bragging about raising the U.S. military budget to $1 trillion a year. Truly stunning amount of money. So that may be why Moody's finally took the step of downgrading the U.S. credit rating. In my opinion, they should have done it a long time ago, but the credit rating agencies proved during the financial crisis that they are more interested in maintaining business than alerting creditors to potential credit risks. In any case, I'm just going to quickly summarize before we get into Trump's trip to West Asia. And thank you for bringing that to my attention, Claire. Very important development. I just want to summarize what happened while I was in Iran. And I returned from Iran after a week in the capital, Tehran, on this past Saturday. A week ago, I returned to Greece. The principal reason why I was there, I was invited by the organizers of something called the Sobe Media Festival to participate in the festival. It highlights the work of independent and non-Western journalists, documentary filmmakers, animators, from I think it's fair to say, an anti-imperialist lens. And although that was the reason why I was invited, that ended up taking up very little of our time, probably no more than a day of the 7 days that I was there. And the rest was a combination of, I just randomly went around the city, using the metro system, walking many kilometers, sometimes using a taxi. And I reported on that. That was a fascinating experience. We got to meet the head, or the spokesperson of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, who has been, deeply, intimately involved in negotiations over the years over Iran's nuclear program. We got to ask him questions after hearing a presentation. There was no restriction put on the questions we could ask him. That Q&A lasted probably about an hour. There was a select group of journalists who were invited to that. I was one of about 8 people, one of whom was also, by the way, Max Blumenthal. And also went to see the array of missiles that the Iranian military has developed at something called the National Aerospace Park. And there we were given a tour of the facility by a brigadier general of the Iranian military who has expertise in missile technology. And again, we were given an opportunity to ask him plenty of questions. So that's some of the stuff that I did. All my reports from Tehran have now been published, so you can find them. Look, if you want to, if you haven't seen them or one of them and you want to see it, look during the past week of publications on Reason to Resist YouTube channel. So with that, Rami, I turn it over to you. You have not had an opportunity yet to report from what you've seen in Xinjiang. Why don't you spend a little time explaining to us? Because I just was hearing this for the first time before we started the live stream. It was wild what you were.
I mean, the thing is I flew to Urumqi, which is the capital of the Xinjiang Autonomous Region. I think like 4 or 5 days ago. When it's a 5-hour flight from Shanghai, and China only has one time zone. So we were flying west for 5 hours straight in a straight line. And when we landed, it was just 5 hours further, right? So we flew at 4 p.m., we landed at 9 p.m., and the sun was still out. So that was the first thing that I've noticed. No checkpoints. No one looked at my passport. It's an internal flight, right? A domestic flight. So there's definitely no checkpoints. But when you watch Vice News, I started watching their reports today just to see whether we're seeing the same things, right? And it turns out if you add dramatic music to anything in society, everything will look shocking and devastating, right? Because I saw a couple of those checkpoints walking through the cities. But I mean, people are smiling. It's just like normal traffic control, the same way we see those same checkpoints in Beijing and Shanghai. But if you add that dramatic music, I'm sure it creates some sensationalism. I went through
just ask you a question. You said you're calling them checkpoints, but are they like normal traffic stops? What are they? As far as you can tell, are they looking at people's ID and asking questions about what they're up to, or what's going on at these things?
So let's just say like in Beijing, when you're entering the main road that leads you to Tiananmen Square, there's just a checkpoint where you go through like a metal detector, and then they scan your bag because you're entering kind of the capital, the parliament, the core of the Chinese state in some way. So these are the kinds of checkpoints. I mean, you could call them checkpoints. You could call them just security checks. I don't know what to call them. Like, it's in the metro station, and that's in every single metro station I've been to in China. There's always a little a little metal detector, and people check you up. Also, when you're going to the Grand Bazaar, which is like this kind of the same one that you see in Constantinople and Istanbul, where you, just because it's a high traffic area, and there's a lot of people concentrated in one place, they kind of just they make you put your bags in those the kind of things that you see at the airports, right? So it's truly like it's no different than Beijing or Shanghai in that sense. And the reason why I kept Urumqi for last in my trip is specifically so I could see the contrast properly, right? I mean, there are kind of these license plate detectors on every single highway and main road in Beijing, Shanghai. You have that in Urumqi as well. If you haven't been to any other city in China and then you land in Urumqi and you see this, you'll be weirded out. But you don't really see that difference. I mean, once you're acclimated to China, and it could be a bit of a culture shock for people who see this for the first time. But I truly feel like this is done in a sense of managing security for a country of 1.4 billion people. I mean, there's lots of opportunities to do a lot of damage due to the high concentration of people at any given moment. Just imagine being at a Super Bowl event, like at the stadium or whatever, right? This is obviously it's tight in security, but that's also you need to imagine that in every single city in China, there's the equivalent of a Super Bowl event in terms of amount of traffic happening. Today, I went to the People's Park, which is a park right behind my hotel. I remember hearing lots of propaganda that you're not allowed to speak Uyghur and express Uyghur culture. There was like 30 people under a tent. I mean, speaking. I mean, I was filming freely as well. I stood out like a thumb. People came up to me, started talking to me. Little kids asked me, Uyghur little kids, like 5 years old. The first thing they asked me is, where are you from? I said, I'm from Canada. They're like, oh, you look American. I don't know how I look American. Maybe it's the way I dress up. Maybe it's the sunglasses. And then they asked me, do you like China? And I was like, I love China. And they started jumping out of joy. And I was like, but these are these little kids that were told that they're being suppressed and not allowed to fully express themselves. And they are enemies of the country. And I mean, they were happier than I am of being here in China. And I'm sure people know how happy I am to be here in China. And then just right now, I had to rush to this hotel so we could do the live stream. And I was kept by a group of like 10, 15-year-old Uyghur kids skateboarding in front of this like communist monument at a place called People's Square, which is right in front of the Communist Party headquarters of Xinjiang. And they were just like skateboarding, jumping off of ramps. And I'm like, I don't know, and I started talking to them. And the problem is that you recognize patterns. When there's like a confirmation bias, when the West tells you something, you end up seeing it immediately. So I asked one of the kids, what language do you learn at school? And they're like, oh, we only learn Mandarin and English. And I was like, oh, that's sad. Like you're not able to learn all your language. And then it just turns out that like his specific school is in Mandarin and English, but then he pointed me to his other friend that is at an Uyghur school. So the thing is that like you see these patterns if you want to see them, right?
Yeah.
And
You also mentioned a visit to the mosque.
yes, so yesterday was Friday, right, which is Friday prayer. And I first of all they scanned my passport, and then I was like, oh wow, like they're keeping track of everyone going to the mosque. It turns out only people who look foreign, who are like their passports are checked, and the locals like just enter freely into the mosque. And it's probably to make sure. I mean, there has been imams that by ITIM, the East Turkestan Independence Movement, which is a terrorist group. They killed imams for being sympathetic to the Communist Party and for talking about friendship with all the Chinese peoples, right? So the Han, the Hui, the Tajik, the Kyrgyz, the Kazakhs, all these people together who make the Chinese people. So I remember going to that mosque, and I was like, the sermon at the beginning was done in Chinese and in Arabic. And I was like, oh, they're not allowed to speak Uyghur at the mosque. This is quite bad. And it just turns out that they do the sermon in 3 languages. It's Chinese and Arabic at the same time. And then as soon as the whole congregation is there, because people start joining little by little, the congregation is then done entirely in Uyghur. So the thing is that like you believe what you're told until you're proven wrong. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Fascinating.
So
Look,
I mean, and
that is fascinating. I'm sure that you've only scraped the surface, but we're really looking forward to your reports on
yeah,
this, Rami. Reason to Resist is we pride ourselves on going to the places where the corporate media don't want to go. So, and showing you what we
absolutely.
see, and then you judge for yourself, what it all means. We may provide commentary and analysis, but our main job is to provide you information that's not readily available to you in the corporate media from an anti-imperialist perspective. So with that, thank you for that summary, Rami. Shall we begin then to discuss the main topic of the day, and that was the Donald's
Yes.
traveling circus show in West Asia. So the Donald now has departed the region, and before we get into what happened while he was there, we wanted to highlight some important context, which I think is not going to be particularly surprising to people in our audience, but it's important to understand this context to really appreciate what happened in West Asia. So can we start with the Human Rights Watch report on Saudi Arabia?
Yes. Just okay.
This is number one.
You see it, Dimitri?
Yes, I do. So this is the report issued. Human Rights Watch is based in the United States. It is considered to be mainstream. It does not level accusations of serious criminality against America's allies lightly. And this is the most recent report. I just picked the most recent, annual report for Saudi Arabia, which was issued in 2024. I don't think the 2025 one has come out, but you can check them out. Their annual reports, and what you're about to hear from me is consistent with many prior years of reporting by Human Rights Watch. So I've highlighted the summary paragraph. Killings by Saudi Arabian forces of at least hundreds of Ethiopian migrants and asylum seekers at the Yemen-Saudi border may amount to crimes against humanity. So apparently they're just gunning down Ethiopian migrants at the border. Saudi Arabian authorities conducted arrests of peaceful dissidents, public intellectuals, and human rights activists, and sentenced people to decades-long prison terms or death sentences for social media posts. So they're sentencing people to death for stuff they said on social media, which was presumably critical of the regime. And it goes on and says abusive practices in detention centers, including torture and ill treatment, prolonged arbitrary detention, and asset confiscation without any clear legal process. So they're just taking the money of people, the wealth, whatever it may be, of people whose opinions they don't like. These practices, HRW says, remain pervasive. There has been no accountability for Saudi Arabia's role in apparent war crimes in Yemen. And I could go on and on about the war crimes committed by Saudi Arabia. They include bombing buses full of children, markets, hospital facilities, clinics, detention centers where migrants were being held. And they created the Saudis and the Emirates using Western supplied weapons and intelligence from the United States, what was, up until the genocide in Gaza, the world's worst humanitarian crisis. It was a matter of their own creation. So that's important context on what the Saudi regime actually stands for and how it conducts itself. Next, we want to give you some important context about what is going on in Gaza. And for that purpose, we're going to show you, number 2, a Sky News article.
Yeah, Dimitri, we can't post the second one. It's a PDF file and it's acting up.
Okay.
Yeah.
No problem. So I can read from it. So the reason why I've chosen this article is because Sky News is, radically pro-Israel by the standards of rationality. So they've suddenly, in the last few days, not just Sky News, but other corporate media outlets in the United Kingdom, including the Financial Times and the Independent, have begun to issue articles about Israel which are much more truthful than anything that has been coming out of these organizations over the past 20 months. Why that's happening now is an important question, but one we're not going to focus on at the moment. I just want to tell you what Sky News, this fanatically pro-Israel normally media organization, says about what has happened in Gaza. The title of the article is How Israel Has Escalated Gaza Bombing Campaign. It was published today. And they say a wave of deadly strikes in northern Gaza has marked a significant escalation in Israel's offensive. The IDF said on Friday evening it was conducting extensive strikes and mobilizing troops to achieve operational control in the areas of Gaza. Earlier, it said it struck over 150 terror targets across the Gaza Strip in the previous 24 hours, an average of one airstrike every 10 minutes. Remember, there are 1 million children trapped in this concentration camp, one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Israel strikes on Gaza, the article continues, have killed more than 250 people since Thursday morning. The impact of this new bombardment is cataclysmic. This is Sky News word. They're not quoting anybody. They're describing it as cataclysmic, as this video of an Israeli airstrike in Jabalia, northern Gaza, verified by Sky News, shows. So we're not going to be able to show you the video, but you get the message. Now, of course, all of this is being done on Donald Trump's watch with weapons that have been provided by the United States. And in many cases, these attacks are happening with intelligence, military intelligence being provided by U.S. military forces. There's also the economic aid that the Trump administration is providing. There was a long expose published, I think it was this week, by Associated Press about the fact that the sanctions Trump imposed on the International Criminal Court upon returning to the White House in January, and the threats to arrest and prosecute and jail lawyers and other staff of the International Criminal Court who are prosecuting the indictment against Netanyahu and Gallant, have ground the work of the ICC to a halt. That's what the Associated Press says. And it's gotten so bad that it's not only the prosecution of Israeli war criminals that have ground to a halt, but prosecutions of others, alleged war criminals from other jurisdictions like Sudan, have also been obstructed in profound ways by Trump's sanctions. So that's what Donald Trump is doing right now as he was visiting West Asia. And we're now going to we want to show you a little bit about how he was received. So let's begin, Rami, with before we show you how he was received, I want to comment a little more on what the narrative is in the mainstream media about Trump and Netanyahu right now. If you could pull up item number 3, Rami, thank you. So this is an article, as you can see, from NBC News. There have been many articles like this week, which have talked about a rupture in the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu, articles saying that Trump and his cabinet members, Rubio, Witkoff, others, are pressuring Israel to enter into a ceasefire, that there has been some kind of a change in America's attitude, the American government's attitude towards Netanyahu. And, as I have been, I've never tired of pointing out, it's frankly tedious to have to do it, but it's important that people understand that, in my opinion, this is a continuation of the fake narrative we heard throughout the Biden administration. We were constantly told that Biden is frustrated with Netanyahu. He was applying pressure. Kamala Harris, when she was running for the presidency, said she was working tirelessly day and night to secure a ceasefire in Gaza. And then after Biden left the White House, Kamala Harris lost to Trump. Former Israeli diplomat Michael Herzog made a startling admission, as I talked in a recent episode of Reason to Resist, that the Biden administration never, that's the word Herzog used, never put pressure on the Netanyahu regime to enter into a ceasefire. It was all, as I call it, a kabuki theater. Why do they do this? Because the U.S. government, they want to distance themselves from the crimes of Israel. So they make it sound like we're trying to stop them. But in fact, they're not trying to stop them. Israel is doing precisely what the US government wants it to do. So despite all of these reports that, there's pressure coming from Trump on Netanyahu, and there's a strain and even a rupture, here's some more enlightenment about what is actually going on. Can we show image 6, please, Rami?
Yeah, Dimitri, but also I wanted to point out that this was also in the context of Trump going to the GCC. And I think that maybe mixing a visit from the GCC and the Zionist entity Israel at the same time could also cause it could discredit his ambitions and the deals that he wanted to achieve in Saudi.
Right. So that would, if I understand your argument correctly, you're suggesting, please correct me if I'm wrong, that the fact he didn't go to Israel doesn't mean there's a rupture between him and Netanyahu. He was just trying to maximize chances of securing, whatever sweetheart deals he could from the Saudis and the Emiratis and so forth. Is that the point, Rami?
And to protect Saudi Arabia's image as well. I mean, I see it as a betrayal and a form of normalization to treat these trips the same way. Also, you'll start connecting the dots between the deals that Saudi Arabia and America are signing and the types of deals that Israel and America are signing as well, and how do they orchestrate for a bigger picture for the region. I saw one of the comments here saying that those deals, those weapon deals, military deals between America and Saudi Arabia are probably going to be used to open a front against Yemen. That makes sense. If you connect that to those trips, if you connect that with any trip to Israel, then this image becomes much clearer as well. So I see it more as segmenting to create an image, at least, to protect Saudi Arabia.
I definitely agree. And, weapons, you spend billions of dollars on weapons, they will inevitably be used. Where are the Saudis most likely to use them? I think that's a very important point. So amidst all of this chatter and blather about Trump being upset with Netanyahu, lo and behold, a report emerges in the Times of Israel 2 days ago, in which we are informed that Witkoff, the real estate mogul who knows nothing about diplomacy or West Asia in particular, has told mediators the U.S. is not planning to force Israel to end the Gaza war. And then if you pull up image 7, Rami, this is a screenshot of the homepage of the Israeli newspaper Haaretz today. And I didn't, try to capture all the articles. This was just the very top. And you'll see the very first article on their homepage is "No progress in Gaza ceasefire talks, Israeli source says." That's today. And then if you look in the lower left-hand corner, we're told that Trump is claiming he'll take care of Gaza. A lot of people are starving. We're going to come back to that in a moment. But then right beside it, there's another article which says Qatari PM pessimistic about Gaza truce talks as Israeli source says no breakthrough yet. So the point here is it's not just that, this is kabuki theater. The point here is when Donald Trump went to West Asia, he was perpetrating a genocide and was doing nothing of any substance to stop the state that's committing the genocide and that depends for its ability to commit that genocide on U.S. military aid and economic aid. He was doing nothing to stop it. And even though he himself is acknowledging that civilians are starving in Gaza and that something must be done. So this is the man who was feted in these Gulf states over the past few days. So let's take a closer look at what happened. We're going to show you, first of all, a wild, I don't even know what to make of this, Rami, but could you pull up the one with the crazy hair?
Oh, yes.
So this would be number 9.
That's a video. Okay, that might take a bit of time to load with my hotel internet.
Here's Trump in the United Arab Emirates.
This is silly.
Okay, so I don't know, Rami, like maybe there's some tradition in the United Arab Emirates of, women greeting guests to the country with their heads uncovered and their hair waving from side to side. So I don't know if this is traditional, if this is customary. I thought that, in a Muslim country, staunchly conservative Muslim country, women are expected to wear the hijab. But hey, man, I could be wrong. In any event, that was weird. And it was obviously intended to honor the war criminal who is complicit in the mass murder of Palestinian children as we speak. And then there was another, just as I can't, only word I can, is disgusting. This is also in the Emirates. This is the tallest building. If you pull up number 8, Rami, the tallest building in West Asia.
Dimitri, I think you're cutting out.
Can you see it now? The tallest building in West Asia. This is number 8, Rami. Did you pull that up?
Dimitri, it's either me or you who's cutting out.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So you want me to pull up which report?
Number 8.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, I'll try to fix my internet.
No worries. So that's number. We've seen that one. That's the dancing here. Here we go. They lit up the tallest building in the Emirates in West Asia with the U.S. flag to honor the man who, through his Israeli proxy, is mass murdering Palestinian children. I mean, these people who rule over these countries have absolutely no shame. It's beyond disgusting. So let's then go to the speech, the keynote speech, Rami, that Trump delivered in Saudi Arabia. And I'd like to start with the excerpt that begins at 1725 of that.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
1725, you said, right?
And while you're going there, just want to people understand, this was a massive cavernous hall. The speech lasted over 48 minutes. We're just going to show you a few extracts which we think are particularly notable. The best way that I could describe the speech, I've watched it in its entirety. We're going to play it at twice the normal speed. Rami, if you could make sure we do that, because I want to minimize the suffering of our audience. I can tell you watching the whole thing was quite a painful experience.
I could try. Let me...
Dhabi, Doha, Muscat. The transformations have been unbelievably remarkable. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that. And it's crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destiny.
All right. So who exactly is bombing countries into and peoples into oblivion? It's the United States that is doing that. No one is at this moment causing mass destruction through bombing in the region of West Asia other than the United States, Britain, and Israel. Okay, to be fair to Trump, he has, at least for the time being, stopped obliterating Yemen. But up until a few days ago, at which point the U.S. military evidently had had enough of Ansar Allah, they were carpet bombing Yemen. And of course, Israel is destroying Gaza. It is incessantly bombing Lebanon, incessantly bombing Syria. And this clown has the audacity to stand up and denounce people who are bombing countries into oblivion. And the worst part of it all is that he's given a standing ovation by leading figures, the rulers of countries that are primarily Arab and Muslim. I mean, this just is mind-blowing, the level of dishonesty and depravity and treason, outright treason, being exhibited here by the rulers of Saudi Arabia and the other sycophants in that room. And I want to say, you know, every culture has its traitors. This is not unique to Arab society. I can tell you that I personally regard the Prime Minister of Greece as a traitor. Okay? I can tell you there are lots of people over the years. Greece had a CIA agent who had been a Nazi collaborator in World War II, installed as a dictator of Greece in 1967 by the CIA. He was a traitor. He betrayed his people. This happens unfortunately, you can always find people in culture, society. So I don't want to be taken to be, because I sometimes hear, you know, our comrades in the Arab community bemoan this state of affairs, and they're entirely justified in being outraged by it. But this is not unique to the Arab world, sadly. It is particularly painful, however, for the Arab world, because right now, our brothers and sisters in Palestine are being subjected to a genocide before the eyes of the world. So let's go on to, sorry, go ahead, Rami.
Also, he's talking to the same people that, well, yeah, as you mentioned, that committed a genocide in Yemen, but also are the main backers and funders of the so-called Arab Spring that has weakened the entire Arab ecosystem, right? The Arab world that is now allowing a genocide to happen in Palestine, right? So Saudi Arabia has blood on their hands for Libya, for Syria. They've meddled in Tunisia as well, where there was a second revolution after the first one. So people are clapping, taking a jab to the so-called neocons, but the Saudis are the, on behalf of the Americans, the largest funders of terrorism in the region.
Hear, hear. So let's go on and look at the excerpt that begins at, apologies, 2045 of the video.
2045. This time it's going to be at 2 times speed. I was able to work it out.
Great.
Incredible. When I left office just over 4 years ago, that future seemed almost impossible, what you've done. Together we had obliterated the killers of ISIS. We wiped them out, terminated its founder and leader, al-Baghdadi. We had healed the divide in the Gulf Cooperation Council. It's a very big deal. And united the nations of the region to stand against the enemies of all civilization. We'd imposed unprecedented sanctions on Iran and starved the regime of resources to fund terror. They were unable to fund anything because they had no money left. They had no money. But the new administration came in and let them have a lot of money, and you saw what happened. It was not money well spent. And with the historic Abraham Accords that we're so proud of, all the momentum was aimed at peace, and it aimed very successfully. It's been an amazing thing, the Abraham Accords, and it's my fervent hope, wish, and even my dream that Saudi Arabia, a place I have such respect for, especially over the last fairly short period of time, what you've been able to do, but we'll soon be joining the Abraham Accords. I think it'll be a tremendous tribute to your country, and it will be something that's really going to be very important for the future of the Middle East. I took a risk in doing them, and they've been an absolute bonanza for the countries that have joined. The Biden administration did nothing for 4 years. We would have had it filled out, but it will be a special day in the Middle East with the whole world watching when Saudi Arabia joins us, and you'll be greatly honoring me, and you'll be greatly honoring all of those people that have fought so hard for the Middle East, and I really think it's going to be something special.
Can we stop that there?
And that's what you want, and that's the way it's going to be. When I left off,
Now, I want to just focus first of all on the Abraham Accords. It was widely reported that before he came to Saudi Arabia, the Saudis told Trump, "We don't want you to talk about us normalizing with Israel because of what is happening in Gaza." And you might have noticed the camera panned over to the, some Saudi officials that looks like to me, I'm not sure exactly who that was. They did not look happy when Donald Trump was talking about the Abraham Accords, although he did say, that you'll enter into them in a time of your own choosing. But he made no acknowledgement whatsoever in that excerpt that the Saudis have said repeatedly, whether they're serious or not, we'll see, that they will not normalize with Israel unless there is a concrete path to a Palestinian state. And right now, Israel is categorically refusing even to contemplate the creation of a Palestinian state and is doing everything possible to destroy and ethnically cleanse Palestinians. So the man has, zero diplomatic skills. That didn't stop them, of course, from giving him repeated ovations and, lavishing affection on the Donald. But you would have thought that the man would have the sophistication not to talk as though the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel was an inevitability, which is precisely what he did. And the other thing, before we look at the next excerpt, I just want you to make a mental note about his claim that they destroyed ISIS. Okay, we'll come back to that towards the end. So, Rami, could we please go to the next excerpt, which is 2550?
Yes. But also, Dimitri, when Saudi Arabia is their answer to the claims of normalization is we will not do it until there's a agreement. They've already put their cards on the table saying that in some way they're acknowledging that there will be normalization in the future. And if you're agreeing to future normalization, in some way it's a form of normalization today. So it's already quite shameful of them not even shooting it down and just saying that it will happen when it will happen. Yeah.
Right.
That are holding hostage the dreams of millions and millions of great people. The biggest and most destructive of these forces is the regime in Iran, which has caused unthinkable suffering in Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Iraq, Yemen, and beyond. There could be no sharper contrast with the path you have pursued on the Arabian Peninsula than the disaster unfolding right across in the Gulf of Iran. Think of that. They wanted to name it that. I said, they're not going to let them do that. Do you mind if I stop that? I stopped it. We're not going to let that happen.
If you can stop that, please. So Iran is responsible for the destruction of Gaza, for the apartheid system that Israel has imposed upon Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank for decades, long before October 7th. Iran is responsible for the destruction of South Lebanon and South Beirut, even though it was American bombs dropped by Israelis that perpetrated that destruction. Iran is responsible, even though the Donald in this same speech described the sanctions that his administration imposed on Syria as crippling and brutal. Those were the words he used. It's Iran that is responsible for the suffering of the Syrian people. Again, we're talking here about a level of delusion that is mind-boggling. But the part about this that I just can't stomach is that he's saying these fantastical lies, these outrageous misrepresentations of reality to an audience that is full of ruling figures from the Arab world at a time when his administration, his regime, is perpetrating the genocide. Just absolutely mind-boggling. Let's go on and look now. Finally, there are 2 or 3 excerpts we want to share with you about Gaza and Syria, and also about the negotiations with Iran. The next one would be starting at 2904. He gives more commentary on Iran in this brief excerpt. So again, that's 2904.
Very profound, which obviously they are in the case of Iran. I have never believed in having permanent enemies. I am different than a lot of people think. I don't like permanent enemies, but sometimes you need enemies to do the job, and you have to do it right. Enemies get you motivated. In fact, some of the closest friends of the United States of America are nations we fought wars against in generations past, and now they're our friends and our allies. I want to make a deal with Iran. If I can make a deal with Iran, I'll be very happy if we're going to make your region and the world a safer place. But if Iran's leadership rejects this olive branch and continues to attack their neighbors, then we will have no choice but to inflict massive maximum pressure, drive Iranian oil exports to zero, like I did before. You know that? They were a virtually bankrupt country because of what I did. They had no money for terror. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, and take all action required to stop the regime from ever having a nuclear weapon. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon.
You could stop there.
But with that said, Iran can have.
Yeah, so the U.S. intelligence agencies issued their collective judgment about Iran's so-called nuclear weapon program a few months ago. Actually, I think it was a few weeks ago, in their annual threat assessment, and said Iran is not trying to build a bomb. In addition, as we've reported, many others, the Ayatollah has issued a fatwa that prohibits the government of Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. Thirdly, he says nothing about the fact that Israel has enough nukes to destroy the entire region and has actually threatened to use them. In fact, the heritage minister in Netanyahu's cabinet publicly stated, I think it was last year, that the Israeli regime should nuke Gaza. And Israel is the only state in the entire region of West Asia that is not, like Iran, a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So its weapon systems, its nuclear weapons are not subjected, nor is its nuclear energy program, to any meaningful inspection regime. As far as we know, not even the Americans are subjecting it. And yet this man is prattling on about Iran and threatening to destroy its economy if they don't do a deal. What the terms of that are, I've reported upon this when I was in Iran. The Iranian government has said very clearly that nuclear enrichment is non-negotiable. And in fact, they have a right under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, as long as their program is peaceful, it's not for the purpose of developing nuclear weapons, to enrich uranium for civilian energy purposes. And you have to enrich uranium because if you're going to have a civilian nuclear energy program, because uranium in a state of nature is not sufficiently enriched in order for it to be used in the operation of an energy-producing nuclear reactor. So Trump is basically using international law as a toilet paper, completely ignoring the most pertinent facts, and also omitting to mention that there's one country in the entire history of the nuclear era that has actually used these weapons, and it used them twice on a civilian population in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and that country is the United States. So let's go on. Two more excerpts, Rami, I want to share with our audience. Go ahead, please.
I mean, clearly the Saudis were clapping. I think some people in the chat were saying like clapping seals to these statements, basically talking about putting pressure on Iran, restricting them from being able to sell their oil. How do you view this in contrast to the China brokered Saudi-Iran deal? I believe that was in 2024. Do you see this as the United States trying to push Saudi Arabia to be again back into at least visible confrontation with Iran? Yeah, how do you define this?
Excellent question. It's hard to say. I mean, I would be amazed, Rami, if the U.S. government isn't trying to do that. Of course, they don't want Saudi Arabia to be in a relationship of détente with Iran, because Iran supports the resistance. Iran is the only country apart from Yemen that at this point in time is taking meaningful action in the region to put a stop to this genocide. So it would be astonishing if he wasn't trying, Trump, to drive a wedge between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And I'm sure that Iran is, to stay in the good graces of Trump, is going to clap like seals. So I'm sorry, not Iran. The Saudi rulers in the situation, yes, the Saudi rulers will express publicly appreciation or support for his commentary. But I would be very surprised if the Saudi rulers want a war with Iran, because that will have devastating impacts on the Saudi oil industry. if they allow the Americans to use their bases to attack Iran, they will be attacked. But even if they're not attacked, the Persian Gulf gets shut down, doing great damage to the Saudi economy. And I would point out that the Saudi budget apparently assumes, the most recent Saudi budget, an oil price that is close to twice as high as the one where it currently is at. So this is a country that is not awash in cash to the degree that it would like to be. The last thing they need to see is a cutoff of all, their oil sales, because the means of transporting the oil, Saudi oil to market, have been destroyed or are no longer accessible due to the war. And I think that they're also trying to stay in. The Saudis want to have good relations with the Russians and with the Chinese, and neither the Russians nor the Chinese would appreciate Saudi Arabia joining in some manner with the United States in the war on Iran. So this is my best guess, Rami, about what's going on.
I think that the Saudis are in a position where they need to please Trump for the next 3.5 years that he has left, but also hedge the eventual rise of Russia and China. I mean, eventual, that's a bit weird since I'm here and I've definitely seen it. But then again, this trip brought in $4 trillion of investments from the GCC. I think the question is, at what price will the Saudis flip-flop from one side to another? With the prices right, I think they could definitely move away from China. Depends on what they're guaranteed.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a lot of stock, Rami, in that $4 trillion figure. I haven't seen contractual documentation which commits Saudi Arabia or other Gulf monarchies to spend that kind of money in the United States. And of course, they were buying huge amounts of American weapons. This has been going on for quite some time. So I think the first question is, what is the new level of investment? Not what is the pre-existing. And to figure that out, you have to look at the pre-existing and see whether there's been a drastic increase in so much. If so, how much of an increase has there been in investment in American arms by these autocracies in the Arab world? But primarily, my point is that there is really no contractual documentation that's been shared with us that shows there's a binding commitment to spend that kind of money in the United States. And Trump has, as we all know, a long and sordid history of exaggerating his accomplishments. So with that, I'd like to go over to the excerpt on Gaza starts at 40:48.
Oh, God. Sorry.
But we're bringing back more. This weekend, we successfully negotiated the release of the last American hostage, Edan Alexander. Just came out a few hours ago, and we continue to work to get that war ended as quickly as possible. It's a horrible thing that's taking place. All civilized people must condemn the October 7th atrocities against Israel, which would never have happened again if you had probably a different president, but definitely if you had me as president. The people of Gaza deserve a much better future, but that will or can not occur as long as their leaders choose to kidnap, torture, and target innocent men, women, and children for political ends. The way those people are treated in Gaza, there's not a place in the world where people are treated so badly. It's horrible. After years of suffering, two of the nations most ravaged by terror are finally beginning to end their long nightmares under the new generation of leader in Lebanon, where a friend of mine has just become the ambassador.
Yeah, there's not a place in the world, where people are being treated like the people of Gaza are being treated today. The lunatic omitted to mention that this treatment is being meted out by his close ally with U.S. weapons, of course. And what I find most amazing is that he's acknowledging the horrors of the situation. He's not acknowledging the responsibility for the horrors, but he's acknowledging they're being subjected to horrors. And yet we have Witkoff telling the mediators, at the same time that the media are claiming that there's some kind of a rupture between Netanyahu and Trump, Witkoff telling the mediators that the U.S. isn't going to put any pressure on Israel to stop the slaughter or to provide humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people. So again, the level of depravity, dishonesty that we're seeing before this audience of Arab autocrats who are meting out copious amounts of love and affection for the Donald is truly astonishing. That's what I think I certainly, that covers off what I wanted to share with you. I'm sorry for subjecting you to this, but I thought it was important for you to see what were the more notable aspects of Trump's speech. Rami, do you have anything to add? And if not, we can begin the Q&A.
Dimitri, I mean, it feels like Trump forgot that right when he entered his mandate, he said, if Hamas does not release all the hostages, all hell will break loose. And that's him endorsing what we're seeing today. If it's awful, he gave the green light. I know our audience doesn't need us to mention it again. We all know that America is behind it, but just to drill the point forward is that this is America's genocide on Gaza. And he's still supplying the weapons. He's still providing cover for them. And now we're talking, there's reports coming out that Trump will facilitate the transfer of 1 million Palestinians to Libya. I mean, I don't know how authentic these reports are, but this is generally the kind of leaks that we see before he attempts to announce something that will happen. I don't believe this will ever actually happen, but still. But Dimitri, I have one more question, or just a little thought over here is, what do you think was Trump's intention in going to the Middle East? What was he trying to achieve? What would be a victory for him?
I think it was primarily about money. He was trying to, the United States is in a really difficult position, as was, highlighted by this news we got from one of our audience members at the outset of today's program, that, Moody's has downgraded the credit rating of the United States. So it's no longer got that perfect, highly coveted credit rating. And this is just a small sign of what is happening. The United States is extraordinarily challenged from a fiscal perspective. And Trump, wants to be able to say, I'm bringing, investment to the United States, and this is going to generate revenue for the U.S. government, and this is going to give American good jobs. And so that was certainly, I think, part of it. He's looking for a win because his tariff war has gone very badly. He's had to retreat. His efforts to stop the war in Ukraine, completely incompetent and ineffectual. There's no indication that war is any closer to an end now than it was when Donald Trump returned to office. As I mentioned, he's highly touted, and he kept saying in this speech how the United States is the best military in the world. Never has there been such incredible military technologies. As we mentioned earlier, he's fleeing. His military is fleeing the Red Sea with its tail between its legs against a military force, an insurgent military force that doesn't have anywhere near the weaponry and the financial and intelligence resources available to the United States military. So he's looking for some wins. And I think also, put it bluntly, I think the guy's probably interested in some juicy real estate deals for him and his family members. I'd be very surprised if this is part of the reason why he went to the region.
Something that we didn't talk too much about today during our live stream was the removal of sanctions on Syria by the United States. The way that I interpret this is the United States trying to increase its position or its control over the Middle East, especially when we're seeing that that there's a challenge of power, at least, where you see the United Arab Emirates join BRICS. There was an opening of trade between Saudi Arabia and China, especially in petroleum. Of course, like, getting money is interesting. Obviously, Trump got a bribe of a Boeing jet as a gift from Qatar. But I mean, the way that I see it right now is that the GCC area could go on either side between China and the United States. Saudi Arabia paused its ambitions of joining BRICS. The United Arab Emirates actually did. And this is something I forgot to mention on our previous live stream. I actually saw the Emir of Dubai in Guangzhou in a mall. So, I mean, you do see that there's a heavy Emirati presence and investment in China. So, I mean, I just think that is the Americans trying to give a bone to Saudi Arabia, access to bigger weapons, fifth generation jets, although that's not confirmed. giving Saudi authority over Syria. We did see Trump praise Erdogan. Erdogan also has ambitions of joining BRICS, getting closer to Russia and China. Is that Trump realizing that America lost a lot of its, I mean, especially with the trade war that didn't really go in Trump's favor? Is that Trump realizing that America does not have that dog in them anymore, and that it needs to double down on whatever allies it could finally get, especially when we see how the dynamics are changing in the world?
Yeah, this is a critically important question. Thank you for raising it again. I think the entire U.S. political elite, not just Donald Trump, is keenly aware that Russia and China have made very significant inroads into the region of West Asia. You know, Russia is the largest buyer. I'm sorry, China is the largest buyer of Saudi oil. It's by far the largest buyer of Iranian oil. It is the largest trading partner of many countries in West Asia. You have important countries in West Asia joining the BRICS or making moves towards joining the BRICS. And China and Russia have both entered into a strategic partnership with Iran. And so I think if the United States loses control over this region of the world, which U.S. military planners after the Second World War described as a stupendous source of strategic power and the greatest material prize in human history. That's the way they described it, because it is the nexus of Africa, Asia, and Europe, and it has this enormous amount of fossil fuels without which the global economy as currently constructed could not function. So the U.S., this is a desperate, I think, Rami, a desperate last gasp by the U.S. hegemon to maintain global domination. I think that's why this genocide is happening now. I don't think the primary motivation is Zionism. I think Zionism is a tool they use to justify it. But really what's going on here is they are trying to eradicate any and all resistance to U.S. hegemony in the region, because they know that if they lose control of this region, it's over for the project of global hegemony. But I think that at the end of the day, this trip is not going to terminate that process. It will continue. And I do think a lot of this, as I understand your comment, are suggesting, a lot of this is just theater, keep the Americans happy, don't get them worked up and excited, because we know what can happen when they get worked up and excited, the brutality of which they are capable. But I would be shocked if the Saudis and the Emiratis and other autocracies in West Asia, begin to withdraw from their relations with China and Russia.
As we wait for, folks, please share your questions in the chat. Make sure they're quite visible with question marks at the beginning or at the end, just so that I could save them and make sure that we get those those questions answered. But Dimitri, I think what's also interesting is Trump kept insisting that he would present himself for a third mandate. He was looking for ways to make it happen. I don't see it happen. I don't think it's possible. But if you're Saudi Arabia, you know that you have 3.5 more years of Trump. There's truly no incentive for you to sign on some long-term partnerships, knowing that if you could just resist the 3.5 years, make him happy for those 3.5 years, then there's a post-Trump era. And I think that Trump was pushing that third mandate to keep that leverage over these countries and to create an illusion that he's here to stay. But yeah.
Yeah, I just want to. So somebody by the name of Social Democrat is causing some perturbations in the chat. He just said something like, Belgium alone could take out Hezbollah and Hamas, and he named some others. I would point out to comrade Social Democrat that the entirety of NATO during 20 years of warfare in Afghanistan was unable to defeat the Taliban. So I don't think Belgium could pull that off. But hey, what do I know? One thing I forgot, Rami, before we get further into the questions, I mentioned, Trump's claim to have destroyed ISIS. Could you just pull up one of the images? It would be 11, which shows Trump with the so-called president of Syria, who doesn't appear to control anything much more than Damascus for the time being. And even there, his rule seems to be tenuous. But Trump announced he was lifting sanctions on Syria, and he actually met with this guy, who now calls himself Ahmed al-Shara, but who up until he became the titular president of Syria was known as al-Jolani. Could you pull up image number 12, Rami? Many of you already know this, but I can't resist. Yes, the classic all-time greatest hypocrisy hit.
Where is it?
There it is. Yes, there it is, folks. A CIA wanted poster. That is al-Jolani, the man who was shaking Donald Trump's hand. A up to $10 million reward for his terrorist head. And this was, in effect, this designation as a terrorist, one of the most wanted terrorists, according to the CIA, until early this year. And we have this spectacle of the Donald standing in front of people in West Asia saying that they destroyed ISIS. I mean, this guy was the Al-Qaeda leader in Syria for many years. So,
Dimitri, did you see that video? Dimitri, did you see that video? Did you see the video of Trump in the airplane, Air Force One, saying Ahmed al-Shara is a tough guy. He has a history, but he's a tough guy, and he's a good-looking man. I forgot what it was, but
yeah, that's right.
What a way to whitewash that guy.
He was praising his suits, undoubtedly paid for by the U.S. government. Okay, so we have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has some, please feel free to share them.
So there was one question early on from GMW who says, why does China only have one time zone? That was a decree by Mao Zedong, 1949, I believe, where he believed that if there was one time zone, it would create bigger unity amongst the peoples and make it easier to make business or like governing more like easier across all of China. Now I did see one because I was looking for the prayer time on Friday for Jummah prayer, and online I was hearing like 12 o'clock or 2 o'clock, and it turns out that there's an informal Urumqi time zone that is not really I mean, legal is not the best word for this because I'm sure there's, anyways, it's not an official time zone, but it's called the Urumqi time zone, which is 2 hours behind Beijing. And when I went to the mosque and I asked what time the prayer was at, he pulled out his phone and it was on Urumqi time. So I'm still confused how that works. But yeah, technically there's only one time zone. Then there was...
We had a question from our comrade in Uganda about whether terrorism exists. I'm trying to find the question, but in any event, that's interesting how you have posed the question. I guess I would pose it a little differently, which is, does the word terrorism mean anything anymore? And the conventional definition, of course, is threats of violence or acts of violence against civilian or civilian infrastructure for a political, religious, or ideological purpose. And applying that definition to the acts of the United States, Israel, Britain, France, other major Western powers over the centuries, and to this very day, one is compelled to the conclusion that there are no worse terrorist actors on God's green earth in the world in which we live than the United States government and its proxies and vassals. But you know, the reality has been flipped upon its head, and it is the victims of the terrorists, the real terrorists, the worst terrorists, who are now, we are told, the ones who present a mortal threat to all that we hold dear. So terrorism, I think, after this genocide in Gaza, the whole concept of terrorism has been utterly discredited.
Also, the way the question was formulated, although I didn't see it, but it's quite similar to what Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso, said, because he was talking about terrorism in Burkina Faso and how Burkina Faso was fighting the terrorists. And then he said, then he corrected himself and he's like, you know what, after all, this is not terrorism. This is French trying to keep control, the French trying to keep control over Burkina Faso, over the Sahel region of France, the Sahel region of Africa, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso. So, you know, this is you need to see this in a post-colonial framework where the French want to keep their enterprises, their military, wherever they are, and keep a tight grip over their former colonies. And the best way to do this is just to have these militia groups basically working on France's behalf. Maybe we could, yeah. Then let's see.
Max is asking if I had a good time in Iran. Thank you for the question, Max. I wouldn't necessarily characterize it a good time because there were no festivities. There was no time for anything like that, no real opportunities. But I associate the phrase "good time" with festivities. But it was a fascinating experience. I'm really glad that I went. I learned a great deal. I was astonished at how different the country is from what we have been told. Not even I, with my skepticism about the mainstream media, was prepared for what I saw. And I would go back there in a heartbeat. And I was particularly impressed with how hospitable, kind, and respectful all the Iranians were with whom we interacted. So it was a wonderful experience, and I would readily do it again.
We have a question from Iranian Kiddo who says, did you see the big Greek Orthodox church across the U.S. embassy when it was built in 1950? Approximately some 3,000 Greeks lived in Iran.
Oh man, I'm saddened to say I didn't even know it was there. I never noticed it when I was at the embassy. I was so focused on the den of espionage, as it's now called, and no one ever mentioned to me. But I wish I had seen it. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll definitely add it to my itinerary the next time I go to Iran.
And Dimitri, did you notice whether the British embassy was on Bobby Sand Street? I feel like I remember reading Iran trying to.
Yes,
yes, it actually is.
Professor David Miller, who's from the UK, he told me about this. He said that after the British embassy was put on the street, the Iranian government renamed it Bobby Sand Street. And so what they did at the embassy was they moved the entrance to the opposite side of the building. So they no longer had to give the address as Bobby Sand Street. So some diplomatic shenanigans.
Okay, let's carry on with some more questions. There's one question here. Curious if all Chinese from all areas can go to the capital without special permits. People are free to move anywhere they want. The only thing that I've noticed is that there's a system called hukou, which is the city on your identification card. And people are all people are all trying to apply to have a good hukou, like a good city for your residency, because that gets you a bigger pension when you retire. But people are welcome to move wherever they want. I have an uncle who lives in Foshan. He lived in Nanjing. He lived in Beijing. He lived in many different places in China. He's free to go wherever he wants. It's just that your hukou is what people truly, truly want, and they want one in a tier 1 city, which is Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, because you technically get more services and you get access to a bigger pension, because the cost of living is technically higher in those places. So people try to play games, get a good hukou, a good city on your residency, and then live somewhere cheaper. So this is pretty much the way it works, but there's no social credit system. Actually, I jaywalked on purpose. I got my picture taken and put it on a little screen, and it's people posted on social media that this is population control and social credit and whatever. It's actually, people find it quite funny. Everyone who jaywalks ends up taking a picture of their face on that screen. Then
okay. I unfortunately I need to leave at this moment.
Okay.
Maybe we could take one more question. Part of the problem I have is that I had to do this because of, the unavailability of my office space today in a park, and my computer's about to die. So I'm going to get cut off in the middle of answering a question. I'm down to 2%. So
okay, let's see. Okay, well, this might be a quick. Trying to. Okay, from Padlin Loon, who says, "Hello, Dimitri. Are we really going to watch over 1 million people starve to death? When can the UN Blue Helmets step in? I can't stand it anymore." Maybe can you talk about this from a legal sense, Dimitri?
Well, every single country that is a signatory to the Genocide Convention, with the exception of Yemen, is violating its obligation under Article 1 to prevent genocide. Even South Africa, as much as I admire what they have done at the International Court of Justice, I understand that they continue to export substantial quantities of coal to the genocidal entity. I don't know the answer to your question. I will say this: there has been, I mentioned earlier in this live stream, some quite startling reports coming out of the British corporate media condemning Israel, statements coming out of people, who are significant figures in the European Union that are unusually harsh, warning of consequences. We've been lied to many times before, so I don't assume that this is a turning of the tide, but there may be reason to think that the images of starving Palestinian children are just too much, even for these depraved lunatics who govern us here in the West. So I don't think we are going to watch over 1 million people starve to death. I think something is going to, either it's going to be the Palestinians themselves will, put the final nail in the coffin of Israel's exhaustion. There's going to be a social explosion in Israel, foreign intervention, something I believe is going to stop this before we get to that horrible point. But obviously what we've seen up until now is horrible enough.
Okay, so just one last question, which is, we have Ramplance, who says, do you guys have Telegram channel? Which is, I think, a great way to close this conversation. If you click on any of our videos, except the live streams, because we don't edit the descriptions in a proper way while we're live. If you click on any of our videos, you'll see all the links. We have Telegram. There's like 200 people or so on that Telegram right now, which is great. So you can subscribe there. Make sure to subscribe to YouTube, Instagram, Patreon if you want to contribute in any way, financially, of course, but that's not obliged. And then there was a question, well, not a question, but a statement saying, try criticizing China while you're there, Rami. Not quite the utopia you're selling it as. I think if there's anything in particular, like that I need to go visit, I'm more than happy to do so. I don't think anything is a utopia, but when we compare the countries that we're from that are supporting genocide, the bar is quite low to what a good country is. And
yeah. Can I just say, because I'm down to 1%. I'm about to lose contact. To our friend who just made that comment, please feel free, and extend this invitation to others, to make specific suggestions in the comments on this live stream, in the chat. This thing is going to be posted as a recording on YouTube, and we will try to review those suggestions about what Rami should do while he's in China. Obviously, there's limits on his time and his budget, but we welcome your input about how best to cover the reality of the People's Republic of China.
Yes,
thank you, everybody.
Please see you guys, folks, and yes, comment Pavilionator. I would love to investigate more. So, folks, we're wrapping it up for now, and we'll see you guys next week. And I'll be publishing my reports from Xinjiang, from Urumqi. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
See you, folks.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.